This video tutorial, I want to show you how you can make quilt labels with your sewing machine. First, let's take a look at the supplies that you'll need. You'll need your sewing machine instruction manual from fabric that's 7" by 7", thread, fusible interfacing, scissors, a seam ripper, and I do highly recommend that you review your sewing machine manual because it will contain instructions for using the alphanumeric characters or the monogram feature of your sewing machine. And these are the supplies that I will be using. So the first thing that we're going to need to do once we have our fabric cut to 7" by 7" is to go to our sewing machine, make sure you're using the appropriate foot. In my case, it's the F foot. I'm going to fold my fabric in half so it's like a triangle. And I'm going to do a practice run first. This is my practice run so I can make sure I get it lined up properly. And with my fabric folded in half, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I will enter letter by letter, store it into memory, and then print when I'm ready to print. Once I have all my characters for the first line, and I can only do one line at a time, for the first line stored into my sewing machine, I am going to stitch out just the first line of text. So on my first line, it will read, "Handmade with love." Okay, and then I'm just going to start stitching on my sewing machine. And it's just stitching out the first line of text, the "handmade with love." You can put anything that you want as a label for your quilt label. And I'm just using some white cotton quilting cotton fabric here. You can use fabric to match the backing on your quilt. You can use a complementary color, whatever you want to do. And there we go, my "handmade with love." And now I'm ready to set up my machine to stitch the second line. I'm going to get it lined up where I want it to start stitching. Again, I'll go back to my machine. I'm going to mode 3, and then I'm entering in my name. And what I do is I enter in the numeric code for every stitch. So M is 34, so 34, and then I press the memory button to store that letter in the memory. And I do that for each character, including the space, which I just entered. And now you can see that I'm using my stylus. For my machine, I can use the touchpad with my finger, or I can use the stylus that came with my machine. Sometimes the stylus makes it a little easier to touch the right number. And I'm just reviewing it, making sure I have what I want. And I'm ready to go. And then my machine will stitch out the second line of text. And I will repeat this for the third line. So again, I'm entering the text for the third line of text on my quilt label, and then I will stitch that out. When that is through stitching out, I will take my seam ripper and cut all the jump threads. Those are the little threads between the characters. And then I will take my scissors and trim away all those little short threads that I just cut with my seam ripper. And then once that's done, I'm ready to apply the quilt label to my quilt. I will place it in one of the bottom corners, either the left or the right, and then when I attach the binding, it will stitch in the two raw edges of my quilt label. I then will either hand stitch or use my machine, depending on the quilt, to attach the top folded part of the quilt label to the back of my quilt. Here I'm just trimming away those little threads. And then a little quick tip is I like to take my lint roller afterwards, excuse me, and go over my quilt label with my lint roller, and that helps remove all those little threads. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, be sure to like it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and visit me over on the Birch Cottage blog. And if you love to sew, you'll find even more sewing tutorials and patterns over on hookedonsewing.com. But be sure to subscribe to my newsletter so you'll be notified when there are new tutorials made available. Thank you.